I've had numerous requests to do a video on breaking addiction to porn. And I think it's about time that I honor those requests and do a video. The reason I haven't been wanting to do this video is that there are already a lot of really good resources out there. I know a lot of people are facing this addiction, and if you go online, you're going to find people giving not only really good advice on apps, on support groups, but also giving advice on how our habitual mind works and how we can break ourselves out of a habit. So I'm not going to go over any of that. It's already covered. It's out there. Go and seek those resources. If you're having an issue with this, there's help out there. Go and find it. If that has not worked for you, then I'm going to attack this from a different angle that I don't think anybody else has. And as usual, the thing I'm going to share today applies not only to addiction to porn, but to addiction across the board, and gives us insight into our deeper relationship with the culture that we're living in. It helps, first of all, to understand a little bit about what's going on with these addiction mechanisms. There's a theory that our minds, our physiology, whether it is created or evolved, whatever your view is, that we basically have evolved or been created to have a mind that is keyed in to certain, what I'm going to call in this video, peak experiences. And I'm not talking about peak experience like riding a wave perfectly when you're going surfing or something like that. But I'm talking about these experiences, sexuality, violence, drama, these things that arouse our system in a powerful way. And our minds, our bodies are designed to react strongly to these kinds of stimuli. If we're trying to mate, it's a very important, aspect of our being. And so as soon as that potential is there, a lot of energy goes into that. If you were walking down a path and suddenly somebody from a tribe that is an enemy of your tribe steps out, then there's going to be a strong peak reaction there where you're going to fight or flee. And food is another good example where if we're foraging or hunting, we know that, okay, there's lots of sources of protein and carbohydrates out here, but those sugars, finding the honey is going to be difficult enough, but then getting it from the bees is going to be even tougher. So that sweetness, that triggers it's a peak experience, something that we probably are wired to seek out. Now, the approach I'm going to take to this porn addiction is a little bit different, as I said, from I think anything else that you've probably heard before. Because usually when we confront a problem like this, we're given the message that it's inevitable, basically, that we're going to have this battle going on inside of us. We think this is part of human nature, that there's one Kenton over here going like, oh, do what's healthy and good for you, and there's the other Kenton over here that's saying like, oh, just, do what gives you the most pleasure. And that those two aspects are battling each other. Now, if that's truly just human nature, that's part of us, that's one thing. But I'm going to challenge that notion. Because if you came out here and you lived in the woods at Rewald University for an extended period of time, I think you would find that those two voices, they don't really exist. Those two voices are a cultural artifact. When we're existing out in the environment that, I'm going to say, that we were created for or evolved into, that if we are existing in that environment, that we're not going to have those two voices. And I can pretty much guarantee this, that if you spent enough months out in the woods, you're going to find that that's not going on inside your head. Think about it. What are the things that we start to have those two voices about? It's things like, should I watch TV? It's things like, am I going to do that movie binge tonight? Am I going to try to level up on that video game, and spend the 4 or 5 hours that's going to take? Am I going to eat that entire cake and the bag of potato chips? These are things that are not even available to us in our natural environment. Out here, our mind, it starts to slow down. It's not dealing with those kind of choices. If you decide you don't want to go gather firewood, if there are those two voices, one saying, go gather firewood, that's a sensible thing, and the other one that's saying, just sit back and chill, you're going to learn pretty quickly that if you don't gather firewood, you're not going to be able to cook your meal. You're not going to be warm that night. And nature provides direct consequences for our actions, so that we very quickly learn that there's really just one voice going on, and that's to do what's appropriate in every situation. Now, enter in our culture. Our culture gives us all of these things that feed into that peak experience part of our brain. So, porn. There's videos about porn. It is taking that peak experience, that desire for sexuality, for mating, and you can literally go online, any of you right now, and you can sit all day long and watch sexual imagery. And if you're masturbating to that or having your own sexual experiences to that, you can have this giant prolonged sexual binge that goes on and on and on. There's no end to it. And this is not just porn. This happens with our drama sense, right? Our natural drama sense it's this peak experience part of our brain that's keyed into when there's a conflict interaction with another member of our tribe, family, that we're going to really be there and be present to work out that drama, hopefully as quickly as we can. But enter in our culture. It's giving us movies, for instance, where we are sitting down to these huge, long, prolonged, hour and a half, 2 hour long dramas that are taking us on a huge emotional roller coaster. And if it's a movie binge, we can just keep doing that hour after hour. Food. Out here, living in the woods, you're going to have a pretty basic diet. As soon as we get back into civilization, as we all know, there are 1,000 things being offered to us. Usually hitting that sweet peak experience, really hitting that sweet spot. And so I can be sitting here just munching cake and cupcakes and cookies and endlessly. So here we have our culture, and it has designed itself around catering to these peak experiences. It's a money-based culture. This only makes sense. If I can trigger those peak experiences and the addictions that they create, then I'm going to have people continue to buy more of my thing. If my product does not trigger those peak experiences, I'm not going to be selling a whole lot of it, right? So here we have these peak experiences that are on hyperdrive. Back to porn. So the thing is, with these hyperdrive peak experiences, we never can get enough. As soon as we're into that hyperstimulation, as we start going up here and we get to this point is really no longer good enough to satisfy our cravings. We have to move a little bit further up the ladder. And every day we have to move a little bit further up that ladder in order for it to feel like we're getting the peak experience, the natural peak experience that we're after. And there's really no end to this. We will eat ourselves into obesity and diabetes. We will watch porn until no regular sexual experience is even vaguely interesting. And we will watch movies and play video games to such an extent that regular life just seems kind of dull and gray. Realizing how this is working is important, because when we have that background understanding of what that mechanism is, then we can say, okay, I'm aware of this. How can I break this mechanism? How can I go back to having these natural peak experiences that are satisfactory? Because the natural ones, here's the funny thing. Porn, it's going to get us into this hyper-aroused state that seems like it's more exciting and better than this natural state that's down here. But the natural state, I mean, I'll tell you right now, a while back, I basically cut out almost all of this kind of hyperstimulation. I mean, I still occasionally watch, like a Disney movie or something with my two daughters, but I really just don't intake any of that media anymore. And what that has done is it's set my mind so that I can really experience those peak experiences again. Sex with my wife, maybe this is more information than you need, but to me it is amazing. It's unbelievable. It's mind-blowing. And it's very satisfactory. And so there's this amazing peak experience. It's wonderfully satisfying. And I can come back to that peak experience again and again. But I'm not led on this endless quest upwards, on a quest that never ends. Same with food. Broccoli, carrots, those taste sweet to me. Because I've gotten rid of most of that like processed sugar stuff in my diet, I can taste food again, and I can have a peak experience of really enjoying food that before a piece of raw broccoli or a raw carrot would have just been whatever. Now it's awesome. So bringing ourselves back to these regular peak experiences is not regular and boring. It actually enhances our life. It makes life more enjoyable. So when you're thinking about breaking free of this porn addiction, you're not going to lose anything. You're actually going to bring yourself back to a heightened experience of life. This brings us to the tool I'd like to share today, which, if we remember, if this is a cultural artifact that we're dealing with, then instead of just trying to break the addiction, we can go deeper and we can look at what would happen if we recreate or transform the culture itself. Now, I'm going to have trouble transforming the larger culture around me. It's kind of a juggernaut. It's going on with more power than I can stop myself. I can use my willpower to, for instance, try to cut out all these things. And if you try to do this, remember, it's not going to be just cutting out porn. You're going to be much more successful if you really take a look at all of these kind of hyperdrive experiences that you're involving yourself in. Really starting to question, do I want to intake these super action movies? It's the Avengers or whatever. It's so cool. But is it really adding to your life? Those hyper-sugared foods, all these things, they're triggering the same mechanism inside of us. And the more we're feeding that, the more we're going to be susceptible to further aspects of that or other versions of that. So, you know, deep into, let's say, super exciting, violent video games, that's going to be triggering the same part of your mind that then is going to say, it's probably going to be easier for you to get involved in a porn addiction. What happens, remember when I talked about just a little bit ago about coming back to those regular peak experiences? And there's also the fact that, or the realization that in our culture, right now, it seems like these things, the cake, the movies, whatever it is, the video games, that it's a reward, a much needed reward. Because a lot of us, we're going to work, or I hear from people that are still in high school and just can't stand it. You know, we're going someplace during the day that we just do not like. And it's not serving us. And we're stuck in these places. It sucks. we just dislike it. And then we come home and naturally we're going to want some rest and relaxation. We're going to want a break from that. But in the same way I was talking about coming back to those regular peak experiences, if we start to cut those things out and we bring ourselves back to more of a soft clarity of mind, then we're not going to need those rewards, because our whole day is going to be a reward. And with this tool that I'm about to give you, you can, as much as it seems unbelievable, you can even make going to work at the factory or going to high school into a powerful, positive experience. Here's how we do it. We may not be able to change that external juggernaut culture, but we can change our inner culture. Our inner culture is our self-concept of who we are and how we relate to the larger cultural context. So for instance, most of us, we have been told that we are consumers. And so we are a consumer of porn. We are a consumer of cake and cupcakes. Well, as a consumer, our mindset is about consumption. And mostly what we're doing, if we look at a lot of our lives, we're living in a way that we're looking out and saying, what shall I consume? What shall I consume? What movies should I watch? Which video games should I play or buy? What porn am I going to intake and consume? Now, by changing our inner culture, our inner concept, we undermine all of that, and we can switch our actions by switching our self-concept. I, for instance, think of myself as a monk, right? A forest monk. By thinking of myself as a monk, all these decisions become simple. My basic culture, the basic things that I consider to be important are forging my mind, my body, and my emotional self and my spiritual self. And so when I think about forging that, when a question or a decision comes up in my life, it's very easy to weigh it against that. Is watching this porn going to strengthen me physically, mentally, emotionally? No. Is watching this movie going to strengthen me physically, mentally, emotionally? No. Is watching this documentary going to strengthen me or help me grow? That, I might say, yes. So I'm looking and I'm weighing everything against that basic underlying culture, but I have to change my self-concept. And so for me, I have to get up every morning and say, Kenton, you are a forest monk. That's who you are. You are on purpose giving yourself a self-identity that then is going to guide your actions. For you, It might be something else. You might want to be a superhero in training. You might want to be a prepper. You might want to be a survivalist. Whatever it is, you create a self-concept on purpose. We're doing this consciously. And then use that to guide your behavior. You've got to drill this into your mind because we believe ourselves very strongly to be consumers. That's our self-identity right now for a lot of us. And even if you have all kinds of other things you do in your life, that mentality is probably strong inside of you. I know that it has been very strong inside of me. But by constantly, every day, reshaping that, then you can start to give yourself a new self-identity. Step one, choose a self-identity. Remember, you can riff off this. You can play with it. You can have fun with it. If you start out as I'm going to be a Buddhist monk, and then you start to discover that, the teachings of Christ are more for you, then it's okay to switch. If you're going to start out as a survivalist, and then you start to think, well, more like maybe wilderness educator, and that's what I want to be my mission. Then you can switch. It's fine. You can switch wildly from thing to thing if you want. But the important thing is to decide on something right now that really attracts you and to start to create a self-identity. Remember that unless you are a realized Buddha, you have a self-identity right now. We have an ego. And it's been given to us by the larger culture. But as long as it's there, be conscious about it. Create your own. Think about that. Write it down. Take some pictures of yourself in clothing that fits how you feel. And start to think of yourself that way. Identify yourself that way. The more you do that, the more it's going to settle into you. Again, I wake up in the morning, I say, Kenton, you're a forest monk. And I put my feet on the ground. It's like as soon as my feet are on the ground, what am I going to do now with my energies and my actions to further myself physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally? That drills it in. And we've got to do that drilling in order for this to set. And if you choose something, if you choose an internal cultural identity that inspires you and that is going to keep you on a holistic path, then you're going to start to look at some of these things, that porn that you're intaking, and you're going to be able to say, you know what, this just is not serving me. And it may be that you're going to use those tools I talked about in the beginning, where you're going to go back and take the advice of some of these people that are using apps and other things that really help to break these addictions. But now you're going to have this underlying strength because you're going to know that you are a monk, survivalist, prepper, spiritual seeker, whatever it is. And you're going to know that that pornography that you're intaking does not accord with that internal culture that you've created. And so this is going to give you a foundation and a strength to be able to use those other tools more effectively. This can be amazing, you guys, in many ways. It doesn't just have to do with pornography. As I said, this is going to cover a lot of areas in your life, and it can be very transformative. But it's going to take creativity on your part. It's going to take some work because there is a strong identity stuck inside most of us that's been given to us, force-fed to us. It's time to take it back and to become conscious and make your own. In the comments, share if you have created your own self-identity. If you try this out, tools that you use or ideas for strengthening that self-identity inside of you. How the self-identity that you've created has changed or shaped your behavior in positive ways. Keep this positive inside of you. When you create this inside of you, do it smart. Conscious, smart. Make it something that excites you and that you know is going to create positive transformation, not just for yourself, but for the people around you. You can be a superhero. You can be a monk. You can be an amazing spiritual person. You can be so many things. Don't buy into this idea that you're just here as a consumer. You're so much more than that. It's time to claim it. It's time to be it. Thanks for watching, my friends. Share in the comments. Look forward to seeing what you write.